dark silicone against God damn it. Testing. G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dingle DIY. I'm Rob Dingledye and today I'm going to be showing you how to do some caulking. So to start off with, I'm just going to show you some things that I'll be using. I have this scraper caulking kit. I got that from Bunnings. It's a bit universal, it's a bit average. I've used them before, but there are a few things in here that might come in handy. I've also got this, it's a more professional looking glazier's scraper. You can get that from a glass supply shop. So this has 4 different corners on it, a square, a round, an obtuse and an acute angle on it. So they're pretty handy. I've got another one of them that's actually been cut up a bit, so that kind of gets me into some tight areas. I've also got a paddle pop stick. These are actually pretty awesome. We've got a good round on them and you can break them, and they're also very skinny for getting into tight places as well. Now the last couple things, you're gonna need some rags. I highly recommend having some spirits on hand, like methylated spirits, turpentine, or like a wax and grease remover, something that will dissolve silicone. That will come in handy. This is just a spray bottle. I've got water and a bit of dishwashing liquid inside of that. That's all you need, is some soapy water. That'll make sense later. You're obviously gonna need a caulking gun as well. So these are things we're gonna need. I'll show you how to use a caulking gun or just some techniques that I use. But for now, we need to give this bathroom a really good clean, get rid of any dust, and then with a rag and some spirits, we will clean all the areas that we intend to apply our silicone. All right, now everything's clean, we're gonna have to start working quickly, which means I'm gonna gloss over some things now and then show you the rest. So, first thing, let's use our caulking gun. Now normally, this thing's all the way out when you've got a full tube of silicone, and as you're applying, you're moving the caulking gun and squeezing at the same time. Now you only do one squeeze at a time, and when you get to that closed position, you stop moving, release the trigger, and then start moving and squeezing at the same time. So it's kind of like a one pump motion. So you pump, release, pump again, release, pump again. So that'll help you apply silicone smoothly, and the smoother it goes on, the easier it is to clean up. So some other things I've got here, this is just a nozzle with a bend in it. You can buy this from your hardware shop. Well, it's not actually bending right now. Come on. All right, so this nozzle you can bend, and that might be helpful for you in some tight corners. So all the way from straight to 90 degrees. Now before you start applying things, you want to get your rags, your spirits, your scrapers ready. Make sure your tools are clean. Not worried about masking tape. I will have a bit of cardboard or something scrap that I'm going to throw out laying around just to clean my scrapers off on. And then I'll give them another clean with a rag. So keep that in mind and expect to see those things. But now we can jump into applying our silicone. I'm kind of gonna start at the bottom and work my way up. So when we start spraying with water to clean things up, we don't want to be spraying water in the areas that don't have silicone in them yet, because that'll stop it from sticking. Now, one thing worth mentioning too is if things go horribly wrong, you can just scrape everything out, clean it with some spirits, and then try again. Just keep that in mind. Don't feel like the world is over if you don't get it quite right. Another thing as well I want to mention is, what was it? Color choice. Okay, color choice is going to matter as well, where you put it and what it's kind of contrasting against, and the smoothness of your tiles. So there's a few things to touch on that, meaning I will be matching my wall silicone to the wall grout. It's a dark gray on the walls and a lighter color on the floor. Now, you will have a bit of contrast around the windows. That's okay. I don't think going white around the windows is the right call. The different color, that's going to be on the floor. That's actually going to be white to match the poly marble shower base. Where the floor tiles meet the wall tiles, because the wall tiles are handmade and very small, they're actually not perfectly flat, whereas these bigger floor tiles are very flat. So when you're cleaning your silicone with a scraper, you're definitely going to end up transferring the bumpiness of the tiles onto one of the lines of the silicone. And so Because the floor tiles are smooth, I'm gonna have a nice straight line against the wall, and because the wall tiles are bumpy, I'm gonna end up with a bumpy line against the floor. So I want my silicone at the floor to match the floor color. So that's why we've gone with the lighter color and the white. So any bumpiness that does get transferred onto the floor, you won't see it because the silicone matches the color of the tile quite closely. All right, I've taken a bit of time to get everything ready. I've filled up my spray bottle. I've got all my scrapers, my cardboard, my rags, my spirits, and my caulking gun. Another reason why you want to work quickly is because the silicone actually skin over. And what that means is when you go to scrape it, is you get these kind of stretch marks and all kinds of artifacts when you try scrape and clean the silicone off, because it's actually starting to cure and it drags and it does all kinds of weird stuff. So point is, you want to be prepared and working quickly and working in sections. So I'll be working in two distinct sections because of the color. And as I said, we'll be starting at the floor, which is my white. I'll clean all that up and then we'll start moving from the bottom towards the top. Another thing too, I've cut an angle on the nozzle of the caulking gun. The further down the nozzle you come, the bigger the bead of silicone that will come out. And that is just going to be up to you to match that cut to the kind of gap or transition you're trying to caulk. Alright, so I'm just going to work on this section for now just because I'm filming as well. One thing to mention is you don't absolutely have to use water. I highly recommend it, but in this situation where I've got a different colour in the corner and I'm trying to get everything done in one day, I'm not going to use any water in that corner because I'll be adding silicone to the vertical section later. So I will just start without a bit of water there, see how things go. So it is important to keep your tools clean. That's why I've always got a rag handy. And don't feel like you've got to press too hard with the scraper. You want to let the tool do the work. If you press too hard, you might actually scrape too much out as well. So it is a bit of a steep learning curve. Now these internal corners and junctions, you can always come back and touch them up. But to start with, we just want to get the bulk of the straight lines cleaned up. And then we can actually come back with our finger and get things really nice and neat. Now another tip as well is you can spray not only the silicone but your tools with soapy water. That'll also help the silicone just fall off your scraper, and it's just another way to keep things clean, which is the aim of the game. Alright, it's a bit hard and dark to show you in here, but I've actually made a mistake where I've pressed too hard and dug out too much silicone, and now there's water there. So I'm going to show you how to fix this and avoid it in the first place. So This happened while using this tool. It's actually quite easy to get the angle wrong and dive right in. So this is a job for one of those red square scrapers. But first we're gonna get some silicone in there, we've got to get it to stick. So we're gonna clean this out, dry it up, make some mess to keep progressing forward. So I'm just trying to dry up the water without touching any of the other silicone that is good. And now I'm gonna dive into that spot that I've ruined. This kind of thing is gonna cost you a fair few rags. So now I've got most of the water, I'm gonna get a bit of metho in there. Hopefully get any other water that's down there. You want to either displace it with the methylated spirit so it evaporates quickly, or just clean it out entirely. So that's looking okay. I'm going to give that a gamble. You can overload it with silicone and try to displace the water. Push the silicone in with your finger and then clean it up, which is what I'm going to give it a go now. I'm fairly confident that will work. Sometimes it doesn't, which means you just have to keep cleaning it out, get all the water out properly. So it can be a pretty time consuming exercise, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to make sure the job looks right before the silicone cures. So like I said, I'm just going to pump in a lot of extra silicone to try to displace the water. You'll know pretty quickly if it doesn't want to stick. So I can push this in further with my finger, just lick my finger, push it in, make a mess. But generally the act of pushing it in and making a mess, it either makes the silicone stick better, or it'll give you an indication of how much it wants to stick or not. And if it's indicating that it doesn't want to stick, like I said, you got to clean it out and dry it out a lot more. But that's looking pretty good, so I'm going to give that a go and use a different tool to clean it up so I don't dive too far in again. Now another thing, just because I put so much in there to try to rectify this, I'm going to get the bulk of it with this paddle pop stick. It's not quite the right radius, but it'll just make using this tool a little bit easier and a little bit less mess. Now I'm just going to carefully clean up any extra bits, like the parts of silicone that have walked up the grout lines. Alright, there we go, problem solved. So that's pretty much it for this one. To summarize, you basically want to get as prepared as you can. You want everything as clean as it can be. Take your time with your beads, and then also don't be afraid to get your fingers in there and smooth things off with a bit of soapy water. So that's pretty much it for this one. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, there is plenty more on my channel. tutorials and build videos. There's plenty more videos on this house if it interests you, so feel free to check that out. And in the meantime, thanks for watching.